Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The lotion bottle hit the floor before I even got to her shoulder. Not because I dropped it, but because she yanked away like I tried to burn her. I just stood there stunned, fingers still curled around nothing, watching it spin to a stop on the hardwood. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice flat. "You disgust me." And just like that, I knew this wasn't about the massage. This wasn't about sore muscles, long days, or stress. It was about us, or whatever was left of us. I wish I could say I said something clever, something strong. But what came out of me was less fire, more collapse and slow motion. "Then this marriage is over," I said. "Pack your things fast." I'd never seen her freeze before, not like that. Not like she didn't know what came next. Marjorie was always one step ahead, always had an angle, a plan, a perfect little monologue to control the room. But this time, her lips parted slightly, and nothing came out. Just silence. The kind that doesn't sit in a room. It sinks into it. I backed away. Not dramatic, just enough to stop smelling her perfume, enough to remind myself I had legs, a spine, and somewhere deep down, boundaries. And that's when it started. My phone buzzed. Not once, not twice, but 7 times. 7 different people. Because what I didn't know as I stood there still trembling was that 20 minutes earlier someone sent me a photo and then another, and then a screenshot, and then the final blow. A video of her, of Diego, of the training session from 2 nights ago. I hadn't seen it yet, but the whole world had. She didn't speak. She didn't move. Her eyes darted to her phone sitting face down on the couch cushion. That's when I knew something was off. Not just tension, not just contempt, but panic. I wasn't supposed to notice it. I wasn't supposed to say anything. I was supposed to slink away like always and make dinner or apologize for breathing too loud. But I didn't. And for the first time in years, she didn't know how to handle me. As she stood up slowly, I turned and walked to the hallway. Not to leave, but to grab my laptop. My hands were still shaking from what I just said, but my brain was spinning faster than ever. Her phone had buzzed just minutes earlier, and I'd caught a glimpse of the name Bryce. Not a friend, not a co-worker, just a name that had started showing up in strange places. I remembered it from when she'd left her phone on the kitchen counter and he'd sent a message saying, "Last night was worth the risk." She told me he was someone from her gym, just another guy in the group class who talked too much and tried too hard. I believed her. I even laughed with her about it. That was 3 weeks ago. I opened the family iPad we never used. Guess who had her messages synced? Within 30 seconds, I knew more than I was ready for. Photos, deleted texts, even voice messages. Nothing graphic, just revealing, emotional, intimate. The kind of closeness I hadn't felt from her in months, maybe years. And it wasn't just about him. It was about me. She wrote things like, "I feel trapped and he's soft. He'd never leave. That's why I don't respect him." Every sentence sank deeper than the last. Then one message stood out. "If I can get him to leave on his own, I get everything in the split. Just a few more days." I nearly dropped the iPad. She wasn't just cheating, she was planning to bleed me dry and walk away smiling. But what she didn't know, I had already opened the safe, and she had no idea what was missing. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even lie down. I just sat in the garage with the iPad in my lap and the glow of betrayal washing over me like a second skin. The longer I scrolled, the clearer it became. This wasn't some emotional affair or a one-time mistake. Marjorie was actively strategizing. She wasn't just pulling away from me. She was preparing to erase me quietly, cruelly, with full confidence that I'd never push back. By 2:00 a.m., I reached something new, a folder of audio notes, stuff she'd recorded on her phone and must have synced by accident. They weren't meant for anyone else, just little voice memos to herself. Curious, I pressed play on one. Her voice calm, smug. "I swear if I have to fake one more dinner conversation with Everett, I'll scream. He thinks tonight I was sore from yoga. Diego left bruises, but not from anything innocent." I paused the recording, hand shaking. There was no denying it anymore. She said my name like it tasted bad. The worst part? She was right. I was that clueless, that passive, that easy to lie to. She counted on it. I'd built our whole marriage on the hope that being patient, kind, and steady would earn me love. Turns out it earned me a seat at the table of fools. But this wasn't just infidelity, it was mockery. I played another file, this one was shorter. He folded the towels again, perfect corners like it matters. I could cheat in his face and he'd still ask if I wanted tea. I turned off the screen. My heart pounded, but not from sadness, from humiliation, from a kind of buried rage that I didn't even know I had in me. She'd taken my loyalty and carved it into a joke. I stayed in the garage till sunrise. When I walked back inside, she was awake, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. Her bags weren't packed. Of course not. She never thought I'd mean it. But I already had a plan, and the first step was making her think she still held the cards. She buttered toast, like it was just another morning, humming even. I watched her pour coffee with those steady hands, the same ones that used to shake when we were first dating. And she'd tell me she was nervous around me. Now she couldn't even flinch in guilt. That takes practice, or a total lack of shame. I leaned against the doorway, pretending I hadn't just spent the night in the garage, listening to audio files of my wife mocking me. Pretending I hadn't read messages where she called me a stepping stone with a wallet. I knew what she was doing. She assumed my threat from last night was just a burst of emotion. The kind I'd walk back in silence, maybe with flowers and an apology for upsetting her peace. "Morning," she said without turning around. "You left the garage open all night again." Again, like I was the problem. "I needed air," I muttered, forcing my voice not to crack. "Got a lot on my mind." She glanced at me with a smirk. "Thinking's dangerous for you." That was her favorite kind of insult, soft, subtle, dressed in sarcasm. I used to laugh along with it. I thought it was just our dynamic, that maybe if I endured enough of those little stabs, she'd love me harder for it. What a fool I'd been. I sat at the table across from her, pretending to scroll through the news. But I was watching, listening, measuring the way she avoided eye contact, how she double-checked her phone notifications every few minutes, how she'd half smile when certain names lit up her screen. She didn't know I already knew everything, so I played dumb. I even asked, "You got plans today?" She barely paused. "Might hit the gym later. Diego is doing a small workshop." There it was. His name dropped like it was nothing. I almost laughed. She really thought I'd be okay with her spending more time with him. The man she'd shared motel rooms with while I was home washing her clothes. I nodded slowly, forcing my lips not to tremble. "Cool, you deserve a break." She smiled, not at me but at her reflection in the window. She thought she'd won, that I was folding again. But by the time she got back from the gym, something would be missing. Something she thought I'd never touch, and it would tear open a truth she'd been hiding far too long. She left around noon in full makeup and a gym bag that looked oddly flat. No yoga mat, no towel, but a fresh spritz of perfume that lingered in the hallway like a dare. I watched her get into her car from the upstairs window. She didn't look back once. That was what broke me most. Not the affair, not the lies, but how easy it was for her to drive away from the man she used to cry in front of just because a movie made her emotional. As soon as she left, I moved fast. I had about 4 hours before she'd be back, and I wasn't wasting a second. First, I grabbed the envelope from behind the furnace in the basement, something I'd hidden there 6 months ago, back when I first started to feel like her distance wasn't just stress or hormones or getting older. It was full of quiet doubts. I wasn't ready to face it until last night. Bank statements, a copy of the deed with only my name on it, a printout of our prenup. She swore we'd never need it. But what mattered most was the small velvet box inside. The engagement ring, not the one I gave her, the one I'd secretly replaced it with last month after I noticed hers missing from her finger more and more often. She claimed she took it off when she went to the gym or cooked, said she didn't want it scratched. The truth was, she'd stopped wearing it because it didn't fit the fantasy she was selling someone else. So, while she slept one night, I swapped it for an identical cubic zirconia. She never noticed the real one. I had it now, tucked away with an appraisal receipt and insurance photos worth enough to pay off half the mortgage, if it came to that. I stood in our bedroom for a long time, just staring at the dresser. Her drawers were packed with things I used to recognize. Perfumes I bought, clothes I folded, gifts I wrapped. They felt foreign now. Her whole side of the room felt like a museum exhibit dedicated to someone who didn't exist anymore. And on top of it all, her phone buzzed. She'd left it behind by mistake. My heart stopped. I wasn't going to check it. I swore I wouldn't stoop to that. But then it lit up again. See you in room 212, doors unlocked. She never expected me to read that, but she also didn't expect me to take a drive to that motel either. I didn't plan the drive. I just got in the car, turned the key, and let my hands steer. It felt mechanical, like I wasn't even doing it, just observing my own breakdown from a distance. The message on her phone was still burned into my eyes. Room 212, doors unlocked, not even a hint of subtlety. She was confident, comfortable, practiced. That was the worst part. The motel was 15 minutes away. I passed it 100 times before, always assuming it was for truckers or cheating teenagers. Now I realized it had been for her. My wife Marjorie, the woman who used to cry when I brought home surprise cupcakes from that bakery she loved in spring. Now she cried when her secret boyfriend wasn't rough enough. I knew because she said so in a message. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just 2 cars, hers, and a black Lexus with tinted windows. I parked out of sight and watched from behind a delivery van. My stomach turned. I didn't have a plan. I didn't want to go in, but I couldn't drive away either. What if I did and never knew what happened behind that unlocked door? So I walked in. No front desk, no cameras, no conscience. Room 212 was at the back, 2nd floor. The hallway smelled like bleach and dust, like they were trying to clean things you couldn't scrub out. I stood at the door and listened. Faint laughter, male. Then a woman, her giggling in a way I hadn't heard in years. High-pitched, flirty, alive. I didn't knock. I didn't barge in. I slipped something under the door, a simple envelope with one thing inside. A printed screenshot of her text. He's too weak to do anything. Then I walked back down the stairs. My heart hammering, my hands ice cold. I didn't need to see her face. I needed her to know I saw everything. As I drove off, my phone buzzed. Her name. I didn't answer. Let her panic sit in silence for once. She came home exactly 3 hours later. Her hair was windblown, cheeks flushed, and her smile didn't match the expression I'd seen on her face in years. It was too soft, too young, too satisfied. She didn't notice I was sitting in the living room at first. She tossed her bag on the floor like she owned the place, kicked off her sneakers, and checked her phone. That's when I saw the shift. Her brows furrowed, her head tilted. She stared at the screen like it had betrayed her. Then her eyes found me. "What did you do?" she asked sharply, skipping any greeting. I didn't flinch. "Nothing, just return the favor." She looked around like the walls had ears. "What does that mean?" "You'll figure it out," I said. "You're smarter than me, right?" She was already storming toward the bedroom, pulling open drawers. The first one looked untouched, the second same, but the third, the one where she kept all her private things, was empty. Not a sock, not a single note or receipt. Just silence. "You touched my things," she hissed. "No," I said calmly. "I moved mine. Yours are still here along with your choices." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She was calculating, trying to predict what I'd seen, what I knew, what I might do next. For the first time in years, I was the unpredictable one. "I'm not playing this game, Everett," she spat. "You're overreacting like always." I nodded toward the hallway. "Go ahead. Room 212, right? Maybe he can help you pack." That's when the panic hit her. She froze in place like she didn't know whether to deny or plead. Her face drained, her lips parted, and for the first time since I found out, I saw something close to fear. She stepped toward me. "Let's talk." "No," I said. "You talk to him." I listened long enough. Then I reached for the envelope I'd placed on the coffee table. Inside was a USB drive. Everything you said, everything you wrote, saved with copies just in case I forget what respect doesn't look like. She didn't touch it. She just stood there shaking, the silence between us finally heavier than her excuses. And I finally exhaled. She didn't follow me when I walked out that night. No screaming, no tears, not even a whisper of an apology. Just silence. And for once I welcomed it. The kind of silence that meant nothing more needed to be said. I didn't take much, just my laptop, the ring, the USB, and one duffel bag of clothes. I left behind the life she thought she could manipulate. let her sit in the wreckage she built. The motel room had already told me everything I needed to know, but watching her read the text, I slid under the door. That was the shift. I didn't need revenge. I needed freedom, and I had it now. I stayed at my brother's for a few days, told him only the essentials. He didn't ask for more. Funny how the quiet ones sometimes understand you best. We ate takeout, watched terrible sci-fi movies, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to tiptoe through my own life. The divorce papers are already being processed. Turns out the prenup she forgot she signed didn't work in her favor. She tried to contest it at first, but I'd already sent the messages and audio to my lawyer calmly, professionally. No drama, just the truth in her own words. When she realized she had no leverage left, she went quiet again. I've started walking in the mornings, just 10 minutes around the block with a thermos of coffee and no one texting to ask where I am. It feels small, but it's mine. Yesterday, I met someone new. Not romantically, not yet. Just a stranger at the dog park who complimented my shoes. We talked about nothing for 20 minutes, and I didn't feel invisible or ashamed. It's strange how peace sneaks in when you stop begging for crumbs from the wrong table. So no, I don't regret walking away, because losing someone who never really loved you isn't losing at all. What moment from this story hit you the hardest? Tell us in the comments.